This episode, we have Marques Ogden. He's sharing with us how he, after leaving the NFL, developed a company earning 8 figures. And then after several years, 90 days, he lost it all. And in his downward spiral, he eventually came to be making $8.24. But then deciding this is not the end of his story, turned it all around. Now he's an executive coach, motivational speaker, a highly sought after trainer. He's going to share with us his story. As always, Marques, what we always like to ask our guests is to tell us about yourself.
Gregory, Marques Ogden is a current national, international keynote speaker, business coach, consultant, best-selling author, podcast host of the Get Authentic with Marques Ogden show. We are ranked in the top 1% worldwide most popular podcast, Gregory. And I am also from Washington, D.C., and I currently now live in the Raleigh, North Carolina area as well.
Okay. And one of the things, as I was reading your bio and your history along your journey, that amazed me, and especially far as for our show, it's called Living the Dream, and that is the journey you took when you saw a failure. Now, you were on the world stage of what most young men dream about, and that is becoming an NFL football player, being at the top of your game, and then one day leaving millions of dollars and traveling around the world in order to come back, far as from what I understand, $8.24. Tell us, at any point, did you have the reservation, or were you at one point thinking, how am I going to make this right here? Or falling into a downward spiral?
Yes, Gregory. So when I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina, after losing my business and everything that I owned, I went from making I had an 8-figure year construction company, and I made $8.25 an hour on the graveyard shift, Gregory, as a custodian from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. And I was struggling immensely with how to support my family, what to do next, lots of hardships, lots of over drinking, and just being very just mad at life and mad at the world. And what I realized at that time, Gregory, was I had no accountability and I had no responsibility in my life. And I realized at that moment, which was called my spoiled milk moment, where someone was trash and rotten meat, Gregory, and nasty protruding garbage over my body, my skin, and my clothes. And when I had that moment, it made me realize either to get up off the curb and fix my life, or stay on the curb and complain about my life every single day. And that's what drove me to say, you know what? I was meant for more. I can do more. I can be more. Let's get going down the path. And that started me down the train of getting my life together to be where I'm at today as a speaker, author, coach, consultant, and of course, a podcast host.
Okay. Now, all of those things, because a lot of people go through that and they begin to make their way back, but all of those things don't come together just overnight. Because when we hear about the overnight success, usually that turns out to be years in the making. Tell us about that journey as far as putting all those components together, if you would, please.
Great question, Gregory. So I ended up, after my spoiled milk moment, I went home and I found my 3 biggest strengths. And what I realized was I was a good communicator, I was a good storyteller, and I wanted to help people. And those 3 things formulate me becoming a keynote speaker. And I began my entire business journey on that path. For 2.5 years, though, Gregory, not one paid job, not one. And I tell people, I realize now more than ever, I was fulfilled in my journey because I never gave up when times got hard, when things weren't looking right. I never gave up. I kept going forward and kept pushing forward. So I was very fulfilled in that aspect. And after a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, I got my first paid speaking job with Miller Mock College in April 2016. And from that point, Gregory, I continued to work and build. And I then started to really perfect the speaking business. Then I became an author. Then from there, I became a business coach. Then I became a consultant. Then I became a brand ambassador and a business owner. And then I became a podcast host. And I start now actually some PR and marketing for specific clients wanting to get on podcasts and grow their brand. So it did not happen overnight. But I'm going to tell your listeners, in order to achieve what you want for the long term, you got to focus on the small steps. And I did that because if I didn't perfect speaking, right, Gregory, and learn the trade and learn how to actually connect with people, the art of storytelling, the art of bringing value, if I hadn't perfected that, right, Gregory, then I'm not where I am today as a business leader and all those type of things.
Now, you are hired by some major organizations in order to come in and train their staff. Tell us, how did those things come to fruition?
Well, I started off with, and I tell people this all the time, lean on your trusted circle. One of my good friends, Dave Nisvinsky, works for NetApp, a Fortune 500 technology brand here in the Raleigh area. I trained both of his sons in football, private one-on-one coaching lessons and technique. Well, Dave gave me my first chance to speak for a Fortune 500 brand for no money to build my resume. And after doing that speech, I thought I did phenomenal, but unfortunately, I didn't do phenomenal because when I feedback from he said, Marques, great passion, great energy, wrong topic. And I was talking a lot about my business and my business failure. And they were medical people, right, Greg? They wouldn't hear about my concussions and CTE and football. And as a result of not knowing my audience and not knowing how to do what I need to do, I bombed my first ever Fortune 500 client speaking job. Now, luckily, I was a friend who gave me another opportunity to speak for them about 6 months later, did that job, and I crushed it. But over time, I've had to learn how to pull in parts of my story, parts of my life that really make the audience feel that the message is speaking directly to them. And once they feel that, and once they feel that energy, right, Gregory, at that point, you become a inspirational keynote speaker that can do what? Inspire, enlighten, and educate audiences.
Now, that was one of the things I had heard Les Brown say in one of his pieces, and that is when he was first starting out, that one time he was on his way to speaking. He had got finished speaking, and I guess he had came from an engagement, and he was coming back, and he said something like, "Oh, I can do that," but he said something to the effect that he stood up, but his mind shut down. And that is that, hey, sometimes it's, as you had mentioned, and that is the first time you bombed. But how did you overcome that fear, first of all, and that is stepping in front of an audience?
My first ever speaking job was in October of 2013 for the Boys and Girls Club. I remember holding onto that podium for dear life, like it was a force field that kept the audience away from me. And over time, through practice failure and through feedback and through watching myself speak and learning how to stop saying oh and ah and like using those fillers and just continue to work on my craft day by day, month after month, year after year. That's when things start to get better. So for me, if anybody's listening, learn how to enjoy the process and study and learn how to perfect your craft every single day. Because the more you're perfecting your craft every single day, the more you're actually working towards turning goals into accomplishments every single day.
So did you do, would you advise someone to utilize Toastmasters, for instance?
So absolutely, Gregory, Toastmasters is a phenomenal organization to practice your craft, right? Anywhere you can go to get in front of people, to perfect your craft and get feedback is going to be awesome. But doing things like what we're doing, right, Gregory? Getting on the podcast, right? People are consuming content now more than ever on podcasts. And when I go on every podcast, right, Gregory, I treat it like a speaking job. I don't want to use space fillers. I don't want to stammer. I don't want to stutter. I don't want to trip over my words. I want to be very polished. I want to be very proficient. I want to be very, excelling at speaking because this is another opportunity to practice what I do. That's my job. I speak for a living. I talk. I coach. I educate. I inspire. I try to enlighten. If I'm on podcast treating it like this, oh, it's another podcast, I'm just going to talk like this and I'm just going to BS around, right, Gregory? That's not doing me any good to better myself at my craft of speaking. So I'm going to challenge your listeners, get into Toastmasters if you want to speak, awesome. But also get on the podcast, radio. When you're having conversations with people, be intentional about how you're talking. Good pace, good inflection, good energy. All those things are going to make a huge impact in what you do.
And as with anything, what about having a coach?
Oh, coaching is everything. I don't care, Gregory, what you do, what industry, professional sports, working corporate America, everybody needs a coach, right? Plato was a successful teacher. He was taught by Socrates. Plato taught Aristotle in his school. Aristotle left the school when Plato died. Aristotle coached Alexander the Great to be a better, more well-rounded individual. And that type of leadership did what? Made Alexander the Great one of the greatest conquerors of all time. Because he was coached by Aristotle on what? How to be diverse, how to be well-rounded, how to approach life from not just a war perspective, but math, astrology, English, literature, poetry. That made Alexander what? Prepared for anything on the battlefield. So coaching, Gregory, can change lives and the trajectory of time.
And mentorship.
Mentorship is all about having somebody that you can trust that is going to give you sound advice when you reach out to them. And that's important because mentorship is another level of coaching, but it's somebody that you can lean on, talk to, have a dialogue with that you know has your best interest at heart.
Okay. Well, Marcus, this has been very valuable, especially far as to our listeners who are looking to pursue that journey of going into being an inspirational or a motivational speaker. Now, what are some of the ways that they can contact you or that they can follow you on your social media?
Thank you very much, Gregory. They can follow me on Instagram at Marques Ogden, MarquesOgden, Facebook is Marques Ogden. TikTok is at Marques Ogden 71. It's at Marques_Ogden. LinkedIn is Marques Ogden. You can also go to our website, www.marquesogden.com, or shoot me an email, marcus@marcusogden.com. Reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you.
Okay, this has been great right here. I know you're a very busy man, and it is much appreciated that you took the time out of your busy day in order to appear on this podcast here. So, as always, we like to tell our viewers or our listeners, and that is whenever you're writing the story of your life, make sure that you're holding the pen. And I'm hoping that our listeners have at their pen at the ready, because you drop some very valuable gems right there. Now, is there anything else that you would like to leave the listeners with?
I will say this, and Plato made it very well known through his teaching, which I couldn't agree with more. Own your story. If you're going to go out and try to position yourself to speak, coach, enlighten, inspire, whatever, own your story. There's only one of you, and that's more than enough. When you own your story, you own your place in the world.
Wow. I hope you found that informative, inspiring, and in doing so, hit the like button, leave us a comment. We hope to have this story, push this story out far as to other individuals who need inspiration. We look at our analytics and we see that we have 89% of you who are looking at our videos are not subscribing. So please help us to get this story out so others can be inspired by these stories.